Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Valiuco and welcome to Personal Pans, conversations about belief, transformation, and all the weird things that we experience. Tonight's guest is Maighdlin Kelly, astrologer extraordinaire, WUFO enthusiast. They sat down with me and had a really wonderful conversation about the power of astrology and inclusiveness in astrology and the importance of having diverse voices and perspectives in developing new ways of looking at astrology and gathering more data, and also how collecting more information is only a benefit to all of us. If you are watching this, listening to this the night that it drops, just a reminder that Wednesday nights are WUFO nights between Liminal Earth and Maighdlin's side quests. We just encourage you to go look up at the skies and see if you see any UFOs. This was an incredible conversation with Maighdlin. I'm so grateful they took the time to talk with me about astrology, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation as well.
I have to tell you, your astrology reading for me absolutely changed my life and the directions that I started going in. And part of the reason why I started this podcast, I think a big reason why I started this podcast, and followed through with it and followed through when I did, because when you said specifically, personal pans, do more of that. And I was like, Pan Paracon, I was like, great. I'm going to talk to all the people I think are doing cool things.
Yay.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you doing this. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, it's been so awesome because I get to talk to really cool people, like people that I've known online or known through other circles. And then they agree to coming on and I get to talk to them and about cool things and weird things. And it's always a delight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, I feel like you recently posted about this on Twitter. How long have you been studying astrology?
I started in 2010. And I started getting really serious about it some years after that. The first few years were pretty casual study, what is the moon sign? What's all this stuff anyway? Mm-hmm. And then around 2016, 2017, I started getting much more serious about it and studying under astrologers with different classes and as much as I could find. And then after that, I was like, I think this could be a career, because I was in food service for a really, really long time before that, but my body was just giving out. It just couldn't really do it anymore.
Yes.
So I had to do something else. And I had already been studying astrology for a long time. So in the beginning of 2019, I decided to see what would happen. And then this happened. And then it went well. So
yeah,
that's good.
That's amazing. Yes.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that I took that leap of faith. Because I thoroughly enjoyed cooking, but it seemed like it was just going to be a dead-end career. And then the pandemic happened, and it's definitely not a place I want to be right now. So
of course, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I used to do art fairs around the country selling my jewelry, and it's all some mostly outside, but it's some indoor shows too. But again, with the pandemic, I was so glad I got out of that, because I can't imagine the people who are trying to maintain some kind of livelihood while also trying to keep themselves healthy and alive, it's kind of terrifying right now.
Yeah,
it
sure is. I'm definitely much happier as a self-employed person.
Of course. Well, also you get to see the fruit of your work, right? It's your work and your passion, and it pours through. I mean, again, I don't want to turn this podcast into an advertisement for your services. I can though, because the video and the passion that you have when you're talking about all of this, it's clear that you know a lot and you also love it. That comes through. I had years ago an astrology reading with a different astrologer who she was more into past life astrology and had some things to say, but just didn't have the same kind of I guess, nerd brain for the process and the numbers and the movement around that. Like, that's the thing that I get really into, like the essentially the science behind it, right? Or the math behind it. Like that, I think, is really beautiful and a really interesting thing that you bring to the table for astrology.
Yeah, well, I'm really passionate about like sharing my knowledge and not just like, look how much I know. Like, I really want to teach people to like go learn on their own, because the sky is for everyone.
Yes.
So I mean, that's just really important to me. So I just want to like direct people to where they can learn more and, you know, see where it's coming from, instead of like just taking my word for it. Because I'm just one person in an infinitely vast field. Like, I don't matter all that much, you know?
Well, and I think that I think is a cool kind of approach to it too, because I do see a lot of people in various kind of metaphysical or occult or paranormal services that kind of think like they're the arbiter, right? I'm the one who has the knowledge. You have to talk to me or else you're not going to get anything of value. And again, there's so many people who are contributing different voices to the field, and you shouldn't be threatened by that. Like, more people involved in something means that we're going to have a greater knowledge of everything, as opposed to
that's definitely the case with astrology too, because, you know, like no one has the like exact same chart really. I mean, like even identical twins are going to have like slight little differences, and then like completely different lives, and each of those completely different lives has a wealth of knowledge and experience and understanding and wisdom to share and help to like inform your practice. And you can learn from every single person on the planet. Like, there is not one chart that can give you like more teaching or wisdom than any other. Like, everyone is equal in that kind of way.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, and again, I love that. That's kind of the impetus for this podcast too, was just talking about and being open about, like, okay, we know some things, there are other things we don't know, and we shouldn't look at things that we don't know as a bad thing, right? Or if somebody has knowledge that's different than ours, that they're somehow wrong. It's let's come together, let's explore what these questions are, rather than I have these hard and fast answers, you have to listen to me, buy my book, I'm the only one who knows what anything is about. Like, go to the library, read all the books you can. Yeah. And it's wild too, because I feel like I mention this every other podcast. My mom is evangelical, but loves astrology, loves it. And that's how, right? Like, that's how I knew my planets in my chart. I didn't necessarily know what all of it meant, but like, I know both my mom and my aunt, evangelical, very into astrology.
That's so interesting. I feel like with a lot of Christian people, it can go one way or the other. It can be like, oh no, that's the devil's work. But then it could also be like the people who are like, oh, well, it's the astrologers who found Jesus, so it's great. And like, I never know what I'm going to get.
Of course. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I know. I find it wild because any other thing that I'm into, especially tarot, my mom gets a little freaked out by it. And the idea of I'm summoning spirits or summoning demons or something like that. And but astrology is totally cool, like that she knows it, she wants everybody else to know it, she will ask me what somebody's chart is if I have a new person in my life. I
love
that. So the stars and the planets to me are very important, and have been since I was a kid, you know, like this idea that there is this secret knowledge out there, but we all have access to it, right? And it can help inform us and how we talk to other people. You know, I'm going to talk to an Aries a lot differently than I'm going to talk to a Pisces. That's you want to know more about their chart, but there are certain like personalities that come out. You're just like, oh, okay, I'm sensing water in you. And then you find out later, oh yeah, her moon's in Pisces. Okay. Like that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. So what started your journey into astrology? You said, I mean, what, like 12 years ago, I think at this point?
So I was never interested in it before, because I was always into astronomy, and I would just spend like all my Fridays at an astronomy club, and no one there was into astrology at all. They would like make fun of it. I mean, they weren't like really hostile towards it. It was more like if someone said, "Oh, can you like read my chart?" They're like, "No, no, no, astronomy, not astrology," and they'd get a little cranky about that.
Of course.
But like that was pretty much my only, experience with it. But then when I met my birth mother, I learned what time I was born. And one of my buddies was really interested in astrology at the time. So he's like, oh my God, I got to do your chart. I got to do your chart. So I was like, okay, whatever that means.
Right.
So he just was like bludgeoning me with all of these facts about my chart for just like weeks. And I was like, oh, there's more to this than I thought, because I thought it was just like newspaper horoscopes. And what does that mean? Like nothing interesting to me. So I was like,
Yes.
there's a lot of moving parts here, and I don't understand any of this. I guess I better just learn about it. And it was kind of from the perspective of like, let me disprove this. But then it just worked too well. But
Yes.
there's a lot of astrologers who have similar stories where they come to it as a skeptic to try to disprove it, and they're like, oh, actually there's something to this.
That's so wild. I
Yeah.
do love that though, because I mean, that's a proper scientific method, right? You are revising your thoughts about something based off of evidence that you are collecting. Even if you're collecting it to debunk it, once you have a preponderance of evidence, it's just like, oh, I got to change what I think about this because there's too much here, right? And especially if you are the type to look at all the moving parts, it's not just the daily horoscope, it's all these cool things that are working together. And the more you know, the more you can develop kind of a holistic picture of a situation, of a person.
Yeah, and I would say that still informs my practice a lot today, because even though now my life is even weirder, because now I'm doing the astrology of weird stuff, if that wasn't strange enough on its own. But like, I'm not out to like disprove people's experiences. I'm just like, I don't know, let's look at the data, because like I hadn't really come across many people looking at the astrology of weird stuff like UFO sightings or anything. I mean, there is a bunch of charts on astro.com, but like I've never seen any like books written about the astrology of the paranormal or anything. And I was under the impression that, okay, like if astrology can show us everything that's going on in someone's life, if someone experiences some weird stuff, that should show up, right?
Right.
I don't know. Let's find out. So that's just what I've been doing the past 3 years, is seeing how this plays out. So like, it's difficult to go into this with any like preconceived notions of how like a ghost sighting should or can show up. You just kind of got to talk to a bunch of people who have seen ghosts and see what's going on in their chart, and then eventually learn some patterns and stuff, because like there's no book on this. I kind of have to just figure it out as I go. But that's so much fun. It's really exciting to do.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and that too, because I saw when you tweeted asking people about their first paranormal experience and looking at that, like, again, I love this idea of exploring new things, right? That weird events also have an astrological chart, right? It's not just a birth time, it's any time. You can look at events, or even, I'm going to forget the name of the term, but like asking a question, or if you're like looking for a lost object and kind of doing the chart for that and being able to find things that way. Like that to me is so wild. And to watch people do that work is really cool. There's so much more there than I think a lot of people realize.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because most of us would just think that the entirety of astrology is just newspaper horoscopes and just sun in Pisces or Aries or whatever. But it's way more complicated than that. It is like endlessly complicated. It's kind of fractally in that way, where you can just like keep going and then somehow it starts circling back on itself. Bonkers. Lots of fun, but it's wild. It can get real trippy real fast.
Oh my gosh, of course. Well, and that it's like, again, from your reading, for me, just that you care about information, right? You care about data. And I think that like data-driven processes, as a former researcher, and now actually I just got a call today in my current job, I'm going to be doing way more research, which sings to me, like give me data. I want to collect data. I want to collate data. I want to find connections between data. And I love this as a way of doing astrology too. Like, okay, let's try to figure out like charts for this, or events that are happening in people's lives. Like, where are your planets falling, and where are they in different houses? Houses are something I feel like I don't know anything about. I need to like read a book about to like finally get that into my head because like I know these things mean certain things. I don't know what happens when planets fall in them. But just all of that, like it's cool. It's just cool to have all this information, all this data, I think.
Yeah, it's really fun to collect and explore. And also, like, for me personally, seeing my weird experiences reflected in my chart from what I have learned has been like validating and reassuring and like soothing in a way. I mean, it's just really comforting to see yourself like reflected and validated in the universe, and you're not just like some sort of weird aberration that came from nowhere, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Like that purpose to it. Because when I had Alicia on the podcast, who also had a reading with you, we both got that, like we were born at the most liminal time possible. And to see that visualization of it too, of the sun just literally hanging out midway on the horizon, that just gives you that cosmic sense of, oh, no wonder I've been into weird stuff literally my entire life, and that I'm drawn to it and it speaks to me, and there is a comfort there, in these liminal spaces. Like, like again, like you said, very affirming and very exciting to know that I'm not just some weird thing that got dumped out into this universe. Like there is that things are lining up in this really beautiful way.
Yeah, we're all very intentional manifestations of, that sort of like cosmic time frame of alignments of planets, and just kind of like the universe experiencing itself. And it's just really cool to see, your cosmic heritage reflected in that way, because I mean, we all are literally star stuff and whatnot. So, like all of the elements from supernova explosions and whatnot. So like, I feel like astrology can be very helpful for helping to remind people that we are more than just, sacks of meat and bones and stuff. We come from the cosmos and the earth, and it's just like beautiful to see that reflected in so many different ways. So yeah,
absolutely. Yes, I love that. Yes, because it is that, like, again, because I love that you also have an astronomy background, because so much of that seems to be at odds, and we can reconcile both of those things. The true, like the science of, no, we really are, it's exploded stars, and that all that matter coalesced, and here we are now, part of this billion-year heritage. And that's all come together with us. Like, and again, to look at positions of stars and planets and see how that has an effect on us. Because of course, if we're made of star stuff, why wouldn't all of these things have an effect on our lives? Like, we're the components are a part of us.
Yeah. Where was I going with this? I had a thought and then I forgot it. Well, there's also this whole idea in astrology where it's not necessarily that the stars and planets are like causing things, but they definitely seem to correlate. And there's kind of an interesting discrepancy between how astrologers define themselves and how non-astrologers define astrology, because then the world thinks that the definition of astrology is what all of these other people are saying who have never studied astrology before. And then bam, you have just complete widespread misinformation everywhere that's accepted as fact.
Yes.
So that's a thing.
Oh my God, I love this. Thank you. Yes. I think that's a really good point too, because I think there is that. I feel like I've had fights with people about this, where it's like, well, it's all just in the stars and in the planets, and there's no room for free will within any of that. And like that idea of this popular conception of what astrology is, right? Or what it means. And I think that's a really point to say, like, again, a scientific sensibility, correlation does not equal causation. It's interesting to see all of this data lining up. What does it mean? I don't know. Let's figure it out. Like, that is a much more playful, exciting, curious way of of approaching the world rather than just saying like, well, this happened, so this means this, and this is going to be this. Really? Like, don't we want to open things up a little bit? It could be way more interesting. There could be some other thing that's affecting both of these, but you have to be open to that, or you're just not going to get the real picture of things.
Yeah, I remember the thought that I forgot, and it's the fact that astrology and astronomy came from the same place.
Yes, exactly.
They were united, and I think they can be in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that. And that's why I think that they're really important for each other. I mean, astronomy is, you know, the science part of it, whereas astrology is the other side of the coin, where it's much more about like the philosophical descriptions of what's going on, as opposed to like the scientific like distinctions of like what is objectively real and whatnot. Astrology is other side of the coin.
Yes.
But they can help each other, and did for a long time.
Right, exactly. Exactly. If you look at so many, not just even ancient societies, but even like up kind of Middle Ages, like we have this sensibility of, again, a more holistic sense of what the stars mean, right? What the positions mean. And these two complementary disciplines that, as you mentioned, were united. And then at some point people are like, this one's real, this one's garbage. And it's like, why? Like, why? We're looking at the same skies. Why have we decided that this one just doesn't mean anything anymore?
We've just compartmentalized their purposes into completely different areas and have pretended that they are completely separate from each other, but they're not exactly. I mean, like, our everyday mundane existence is just so powerfully shaped by astrology/astronomy to the point where no one gives it a second thought. Like, the days of the week come from the planets, and that's not an accident.
Right.
Our calendar is based off of the sun and the moon, and that's not an accident at all. Right. So, and like these archetypes manifest in our life like everywhere, and it's just so like, you know, hidden in plain sight sort of thing. Yes. So when people just make sweeping statements of astrology is not real, it's like your whole life is completely based off of it, whether you know it or not. I mean, like, the calendar isn't exactly real either. We made this up. Like, we literally made all of this up, and that doesn't mean it's worthless.
Exactly. Thank you. I love this. I feel like I ranted about this on another episode, but this book I read in college called The Devil in Commodity Fetishism, and just this idea that, you know, we like people believe in the market, right? And market forces as this kind of force outside of themselves, right? And the stock market and developing these theories about like how the market moves. And like, no, folks, take a step back. We created this thing, right?
Exactly.
This idea that this egregore that we created is somehow separate from us and a thing that we have to attempt to figure out. Again, misses the point. Like you talked about compartmentalization, like so much of who we are gets put in these little boxes. It's like, no, friends, we're part of this. Like, and it's a part of us. You can't just say it exists outside of that. And I love that. That's such a good point. Like, the days are named after the planet, like the division, right? Like the week, the planets inform so much of who we are. You can't just act like, okay, well, that's fine and that's accepted, but the rest of this is all made up. Like, no,
I mean, denying parts of our humanity is not generally a good thing. It doesn't really lead to any sort of healing or evolution or anything good. So
good point. I mean, that's such a good point. Again, it's such a, that's why I just love talking to different people about weird stuff, because to me it's a nice way of engaging in that play and in that sensibility of, hey, we don't know, we're figuring it out. And even, you know, again, even the language that we use to describe things, we invented that. We put meanings on all of these different sounds and decided what that means. It's a way that we communicate with each other. You don't have to accept it as, well, this is this like pure fact, right? Whatever, this or a given. Question why things are the way they are. Maybe there's a better way of operating. Just because something has been a certain way for however many years do you still want to keep doing that? Or do you want to explore and play and move around and kind of look at different angles of things?
Yeah, and because this all came from us, I mean, like, even our understanding of things astronomically is still coming through a very human consciousness filter, which is
Yes.
never objective.
Yes.
But also, like, what I was trying to say is that because this all originates from within us, we have a tremendous amount of agency. You know, the power that we had to create this, we still have to work
Yes.
with it however we want. And just
Yes.
like running away from it and saying, this part of our human experience of the world is not real, I'm just going to hide under the bed and pretend it doesn't exist. That's not engaging consciously with your reality and with, you know, subjects to explore. I don't know. I'm just curious about everything. So I just need to know. There's information. Tell me the information.
Yes,
I don't know.
Well, that's my sensibility, and it has been since I was a kid. I have always looked at data and tried to put together data and sew it together and try to make sense of things, right? And like, okay, well, I thought this meant this, but this new data came in, so now I have to incorporate this. This could mean this whole other different thing. And then again, you know, starting in my 20s, having this greater sensibility of what you just mentioned, this idea of like us as like the universe kind of experiencing itself, right? That the subjective experience is maybe more of the point, right? And the data can just get us to that greater understanding of this subjective experience. Doesn't necessarily mean anything on its own, but that allows for more play and excitement and curiosity. And yeah, don't you want to just like know more cool things? Like I feel really bad for people who kind of shut themselves off from all these different aspects, because there might be something there that's of value to you but if you just reject it all wholesale, you're never gonna know that. How sad. Yeah.
Intentionally closing yourself off to knowledge is not exactly scientific, but okay. What do I know?
That's such a good point. Exactly. Like that's something that's always bothered me. And like again, something that changed my life, right, was my research methodology course for sociology as part of my senior year, right? And the statistics professor, he was the best. He just said, like, we never know anything. You only fail to disprove or you disprove. That's it. You never prove anything.
Yeah.
And that is such a
Pretty
good
much.
model. Yeah. And that's like proper scientific method. You can't just say like, well, we found this data and this is this. It's like, those are the best working theories we have right now. There will be new data. That's just how it works, right? As there are new people figuring out new ways to measure things, again, that will change. I love the fact that you mentioned that like there's no objective reality. Like that's this illusion. Like even the decision to measure certain data, to use a measure is a subjective choice. You're missing out on all that other kind of stuff.
Yes.
So as you get new people into fields, they will be thinking of new ways of looking at the data and how to collect it. You're going to get a different idea of what is going on, right? Be open to that. You can't just say, well, this is how it is and this other stuff doesn't exist. Like, okay, like you said, where's your scientific method here? Like you've already shut yourself off. Don't turn science into like a dogma. It's sad.
It seems to come from a very like knee-jerk emotional place though. Like it's clearly coming from a very emotional place. So that's beyond my pay grade to really give any sort of like thoughts on that. But that's just what I've noticed about it. Because I mean, I guess that's kind of the same for coming from my experience too in the beginning before I like knew anything about it. It's just like, I don't know, the people around me said it wasn't real. So I just filed it away as not real and don't think any further of it. And if someone says it's real, it's like, nope. My dad's smarter than your dad. He says it's not real. Pretty much.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So it does take a little bit of humility to face something that you don't want anything to do with, to set your feelings aside, to like learn something about it. And not everyone is willing to do that.
That's true. Yes.
What are you gonna do? You can't you get to it when you're ready. And if you're not ready, you're not ready. You can't force it. That's why I don't try to like convince people of astrology, because like it's not a dogma, it's not a religion or a spirituality or anything remotely close to that at all. It's just like a fancy way of telling time, basically.
Yes.
So like it's not like if you know about astrology you're going to be saved or have a better life or anything like that. It's just like another framework for, you know, participating in life if you want. It doesn't really matter if you never get into it at all.
Yeah.
So that's why I like don't care to try to like convince people of it, because like you don't have to be interested in astrology. Like it's not a mandatory thing. You don't need it to like breathe or anything like that. So that's another reason I get a little annoyed when people get like super emotional about saying that it's like not real or whatever. Cause like this discourse doesn't matter. Like it really, I don't think it matters at all.
Yes.
I think it's just a waste of time, honestly. I mean, like the time that you spend saying it is or is not real, you could be spending collecting data instead of just being loud about it. I don't know, but sometimes people just want to be loud and they don't want the data. They just really want to be, they want to fully embody their feelings about whatever it is. And, you know, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. Like, who am I to say that's good or not? I don't care.
You have the best sensibility about this. This is amazing. because to your point, that so many people, like you said, they get so mad about the fact that it's not science, and that argument that like, well, you're just, it's something you want, right? Or that you care about. And it's like, you're really up in your feelings trying to argue that other people are being emotional about their attachment to astrology. That like, maybe interrogate why you're doing that, right? Why you have this emotional attachment. And again, why you're having such a problem with accepting the idea that you might not know something. Because to your other comment about like people come to things when they're ready, I grew up, I was very much a perfectionist, had a very crazy home life. So I felt like I had to be perfect about everything. And one of the best things that happened as part of like therapy and all sorts of trauma recovery was being able to step back and say, I don't know what this is. I don't know. Tell me what you know, right? That I don't have to know everything. It's powerful to not know things, and then to say like, where should I look for more information about this? Like to be open to that. That changed my life. Like, I don't know what this is. Tell me what this thing is. And to be able to say like, oh, maybe this thing I believed isn't necessarily correct, because there's, like you said, other data out there that I hadn't looked at or didn't even know to look for. That's way more exciting to me. Again, like if I've had some preconceived notion and somebody's like, oh, actually take a look at this, like, oh, great, I have a new book to read and new knowledge to gain and something to better understand, rather than being like up in my feelings and feeling ashamed that I don't know everything or I'm not perfect about everything. Like, you're a human being. Again, we're meat sacks. We might be made of star stuff, but we're meat sacks, like walking around this rock, you know, you're not going to know everything. That's okay. Go explore.
Yeah. There is definitely something to be learned if you can kind of like dig into that emotional reaction of people really hating astrology to see like where exactly that's coming from. Because I have seen before that other people hate it because like on they've had an experience on a dating site where someone was like, oh, you're a Gemini, I'm a Scorpio, that means we're not going to get along, so I'm just like not even going to try to have any sort of interaction with you, things like that. And like if that is your experience of astrology, your negative feelings for it are completely valid. Like that's completely valid. So like it's definitely very helpful for astrologers to be emotionally present when faced with opposition, because there's they are describing something like real and important. They just may not have the right words for it. Because like if you don't know anything about astrology and someone says to you, oh, you have this configuration, therefore you're rude or whatever, if you've never studied astrology, the only language you're going to have to describe that experience of it is going to be like somewhere along the lines of, this is bullshit. So astrologers need to also like be aware of that too, because you know, while there's misinformation about what astrology is, there's also misinformation about, you know, astrology coming from people who have read a book and a half and now suddenly they know everything. But that's not the best. Problems happen there too.
Yeah.
So it's complicated. It's very complicated on both sides of it.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I think that's a really beautiful point, this idea of, you know, being emotionally present and kind of meeting people where they are. Because if someone has had a bad experience with somebody who believes in astrology and hasn't had other conversations, they are probably apt to believe that people who believe in astrology talk the same way, think the same things, and have the same knowledge, and are kind of interacting with people that way. So of course you're going to say like, oh, I don't know if I don't feel good about this. And to be open and present and willing to engage with somebody in a, you know, emotionally present, but also a certain amount of like a healthy kind of detachment. Like, I'm not going to take this personally, but I'm going to meet you where you are, you know, because I mean, it's so wild. Like the episode that I just edited with Jason, like, he's an Aquarius and he has a moon in Scorpio. And one of the first things we bonded over was the fact that like Aquarians with moons in Scorpio, like that's a very specific thing. And he even sent me like a link for like the two things together. I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. All the other Aquarius, like a good like 75% of stuff I see about just Aquarius sun, I'm like, no, that's not me. Because I have this deep emotional life that I can't escape.
Because I mean, like if someone has like their sun, moon, rising, and a few other planets all in Aquarius, maybe that's the case. But if you only have your sun there and everything else is in a completely different sign, you're going to have a way more nuanced experience of that Aquarian energy.
That's it. Right. And that's, like you said, it's data collection, like an understanding that there's more nuance there. It's not just, like you said, the newspaper horoscope, or even, I mean, whatever kind of random article you see online that's trying to like farm clicks because astrology is getting a little more mainstream. I don't want to say now, I want to say again, because like, I don't know, it's probably buried in there, but there's like a book I got from my aunt, like 20 years ago, that purple book, The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need, you know? That was my entry point, right? Like it's like, I don't know, the past 40, 50 years, it's been there. There's been this kind of awareness of it and people exploring, but it's gotten a little more in the public discourse, which I like, but can lead to some
it is certainly an exciting time for astrology. It really is. Like also with old texts being translated and whatnot too, because like a lot of the techniques that I use were just like, a lot of things were very recently translated in like the 90s with Project Hindsight, where just like a whole bunch of texts that had never been translated before suddenly were. So there's
That's
so much
amazing.
going on.
Cool.
There's so much going on.
I had no idea. That's incredible. What do you mind talking about Project Hindsight? Because I've never heard about this before.
You gotta look into Chris Brennan. He's the one that does the Astrology Podcast.
Oh yes.
And also Austin Coppock. I think Nick Dagan Best was also involved, and several other people. I don't remember a lot of the details, but if you look for them, they've got all of the details.
Well, and
I'm probably wrong on the dates of when it started. It was probably a little later. Like, I don't remember, honestly. And again, that was something I would have had to look up.
Of course. And again, that's totally fine. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is that broader point of there's new knowledge, right? There are old things that we're translating now. Like, it's not just this idea, I talked to Mortellus about this in terms of ritual practice too. We have to stop looking at things as like, they're not as they're not evolving, right? It's not just a stagnant practice. If you look at it as a living practice, an evolving practice,
Yes.
there's always going to be new data. Look at the new
Yes.
data. That's only going to help you. Like, and it
Yeah.
should be exciting. Again, that curiosity, that
Yeah.
exploration. Like, don't you want to know more about a thing that you like?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Astrology has never been stagnant. I mean, astrologers have been bickering over things for millennia, literally thousands and thousands of years, especially the whole like fate versus free will thing. There's
Yes.
been discourse on this for so many years, and also just like techniques developing over time, like how systems changing. I mean, it is very much a living practice because it's been, coming from, so many different people over so many different years, and
Yes.
it's not a static thing at all. And then whenever we discover a new planet, then suddenly everything changes again, and we have to like
Yes.
keep finding more data, because like when Uranus was discovered, we had gone thousands of years where Saturn was the limit. We couldn't see
Yes.
anything beyond that, so that was just the limit. But then Uranus comes around and everyone's all like, oh, well, what do we do now? So that's
Right.
just going to keep happening.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yeah. And again, that's just cool to me. Like, okay, there's new data. How do we evolve? How do we work through our practice? And again, as different people are working on it, okay, what are these different subjective lenses? What can they bring to the table? What can we all bring to the table? Again, everybody is different. You're going to have a different way of looking at something. And you might have, like, somebody who's new to the field might have a new cool idea that could
yeah,
radically change everything. Like, to me, that's very
yeah,
powerful.
definitely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more people involved, the more we get to learn.
Yes. And
So
and again, like I said, this could be my obsessive sensibility, but when I am into something, I want to know everything. I want to read all the books. I want to find all the
yeah,
podcasts, like tell me everything, because I
yeah,
don't want to just have some stagnant sensibility of something. Like, I want the data. I want to know where the changes are happening, or if work is happening and again it hasn't been translated yet, it hasn't come in yet. Like, okay, well, what are the open projects, right? What have people been saying about this? That to
hmm,
me is way more exciting.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also tend to think that what we discover astronomically mirrors our capacity to what we can discover within ourselves. And I
Oh,
think that has been the case this whole time and will
yes.
continue to be.
Oh my God. I love this. Yes. Well, and especially like if you're looking at it as the universe kind of understanding or us understanding ourselves like subjectively, right? This like greater
Mhm,
kind of cosmic force and this awareness, right? And
mhm,
like that openness when you're ready for it, right? Like that's
mhm,
part of so many spiritual practices too. It's like it'll find you when you're ready. Like
mhm.
you prepare yourself, but you ultimately can't force certain things. They will just appear. You can only just prepare
Yeah.
yourself and be ready when it does appear, if it appears, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I don't think that these like new discoveries with the science side of astronomy cause us to suddenly be able to, learn all of these new things within ourselves, but it does seem to correlate. And that's that
Yes.
whole cause versus correlation, fate versus free will thing again.
Yes. Right.
So, I mean, that's them just being two sides of the same coin. So,
That's exactly it. Yeah. And again, that sensibility of, okay, the data is here. We don't know if one causes the other, but it's interesting that these things are happening concurrently. That's something to pay attention to, this
mhm.
idea of, especially like with Bigfoot, like I didn't even realize that like a lot of Bigfoot sightings kind of correlated with UFO sightings or correlated with certain smells. It's like, this is
Yeah.
interesting. Like the
Mm.
fact that this is all happening at the same time, again, doesn't mean that one is causing the other. Might
Mhm.
mean there's something else that's causing all three, or like these things all happen together for a particular reason. Let's explore. Let's do the research. Let's figure out why this is. We might learn something, right? Like
Yeah.
that curiosity towards it. Yeah.
Yeah, this all has a lot to do with my Phenomenicon presentation too,
Yes, I know. I'm
honestly.
so excited for
Me
it.
too. I'm like such a shy person, but for whatever reason, I'm like actually looking forward to a public speaking thing. All right, let's do this.
Well, of course. It's like, again, to talk about the astrology of the weird, like that, like how exciting is that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what people think of these ideas, because I'm proposing kind of like a framework for engaging with the weird.
So good. That's amazing. That's good. I know this episode is going to come out after your presentation. So I'll probably
Okay.
have to revisit you at some point and be like, okay, so you said this and this I was really excited about. I'll just slide into your DMs. You don't have to reply right away. I'm not I'm not offended. I know you're busy.
Mhm.
But so you have been studying the astrology of the weird, and of course, like your Phenomenicon presentation, we can leave that aside. But have there been any dates that you've looked at, any specific events that have really gotten you excited in terms of how the planets have lined up with certain experiences on the ground?
Let me see. It's always fun to see what Mercury is up to, because Mercury is kind of like that information processing planet. It takes, data and information from one place to the next, back and forth. So it's all about communication and whatnot, information, writing and whatnot. So it's really interesting to see what that planet is up to and what other planets it's aspecting during weird times. Like for the Hellier charts, for example, like when Hellier season 1 and 2 were released,
Yes.
Mercury was very closely aspecting like all 3 of the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
Oh,
so those planets are way out there. So Mercury, close to the sun, much more personal planet.
Yes.
But when you get way out there, it's not very personal. It's very just like, generational, out there kind of thing.
Yes.
So to see that, Mercury, the communication planet, was very closely aspecting the planet of like shocking insights and magic, confusion and like deceit, and then also like total transformation. It's just like, whoa, that's cool.
Of course.
It's just like, it's just so in there, because Mercury is not always aspecting these planets, especially not all of them at once.
Yes.
So that was something, because it also seems to describe the information coming from these like way out there weirdo planets and how that is personally experienced and dealt with and then communicated and shared with everybody else.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And again, that's incredible. And I feel like, so many of the people I know in paranormal and occult circles right now, I met because of Hellier. And so it's wild to see that, because I feel like Hellier in a lot of people kind of like opened up or unlocked this experience, right? Like a new way of kind of looking at the paranormal and experiencing the paranormal, and that approach. So that Mercury, that like that messenger, right? Like that communication, like that's blown my mind right now. Like that's really cool.
Yeah.
Mercury
is also the trickster, so that just seems to be like fitting too.
Yeah, so appropriate. That's cool. That's amazing.
And like that, there's probably way more things that I just like don't see yet.
Sure.
So I would like other people to look into this too. Like I can't be the only person looking into the astrology of weird stuff. That's way too much. That's way too much. So like there's more. Just because I found that one thing doesn't mean that's the only thing. That's just one of the many things that's out there. Yes. So we need people with a completely different perspective and set of experiences to look at things too, and we can learn from them, and then we have more data and more understanding and more togetherness, and everything goes well.
That's how I feel exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And again, I know I already said this, but I do love that you are so open to other people exploring astrology, right? Like that. I mean, you even said in my chart, like, you could look into being an astrologer. And I was like, oh, I don't think anyone has ever said to me like, oh, you could be in this field that I'm in, like, so there's so much gatekeeping. And I think it's refreshing and it's exciting to be like, go explore. I love this thing. Your planets indicate you might love this thing and be good at this thing too. go explore, right? Again, do some data collection. That's really cool.
Yeah, this is not a field to be gatekeeping in, because it just sabotages everyone. It sabotages the whole field.
Yes.
I mean, there's definitely problems with people who have, only read a certain amount and then they go off and say that they're an authority and things like that. But like in general, more people participating and sharing their experience equals more knowledge and then more understanding for everyone. Because like I have like my particular niche, but there's so much room for your niche or Joe's niche or whatever, like anyone, because like we're all interested in our own like specific thing. Because like maybe someone gets into the astrology of paranormal stuff, but they like to focus on finding times for when is a good time to have a seance or something like that, or the astrology behind when are we having more technical difficulties with like our paranormal investigation equipment and things like that. Like there's infinite different little places that you can go with it.
Yes.
And it all helps everyone else.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and again, like that's always been my sensibility about these things, like have more people involved, because like I do think there is a danger, and I see it now because there's so much available and easily accessible information online that I think it's easy for a lot of people to just call themselves experts because they've read a couple books or they've read several internet articles and they know things. And again, I think it's powerful to say that even if you are, like, again, I've been reading tarot professionally for several years. I'm always learning something new. I'm always having a new experience with the cards that shapes how I do readings. Certain cards mean certain things to me. So I know if they come up at readings, this person needs this very specific message, and that is not the traditional message. Again, this idea of a living practice, like that's way cooler. Just like, okay, I don't know, right? Like, and because even if I'm a professional, that doesn't mean I know everything. I'm willing to accept more information, or that other people are going to have different experiences. It's the same, it's the same deck of cards for the most part, but like everybody has a different relationship with it. Every single reader has a different relationship with those cards.
Yeah, like, it's exactly the same. You're right. You're absolutely right. Because, yes, you've pulled the high priestess thousands of times, but not everyone is going to have the exact same experience of it. And their experience of what's going on in their life when that card comes up has the potential to like give you more information about how else that can manifest. Same thing with tarot and astrology. Same thing.
Yes, right. And again, that's so cool to just say like, okay, here's again, more data. More data is always better. Let's look at this. Let's learn new things. Let's explore. Even if like something comes up and you have to throw out everything you used to know, there's actually a lot of power in that too. Like, oh, cool. I've got another adventure to go on. I'm going to explore this new information and this new data.
Yeah. So much fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think play is a very underrated but very powerful way of learning.
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite books, I think it's on a different shelf. I always look here because most of my best books are here. But it's Homo Ludens by Johann Huizinga. And his thesis for that book is that play is the basis of human civilization. It's the basis of human groups. And you just, and looking at animals, how do animals learn how to be animals? They play when they're young. And this idea of play as a way to survive difficult situations, how to learn how to be a human being. And we're so alienated from that sense of play in so many aspects of our lives. And it's a real shame, because that is integral to who we are. Again, not just as humans, but as living beings. The place is suffused in so much of life in so many different species and situations. To ignore that or to look at it as some like immature thing, it's like, no, that is essentially like, it's essential to life. And so if you look at it that way, you can look at what's happening in the universe. Again, this idea of Mercury as a trickster, right? The universe is playing with us too. So let's go exploring.
Yeah, and play is also really helpful and has been for humans for thousands of years for conflict resolution. And I think this country would do well to remember that.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So.
Oh my God. And that's such a good point too, because again, clearly I'm obsessed academically with play as well. And there are so many studies about how, again, it's kind of, we're so alienated, we need studies to give us information of things that we have known for how, millennia. But unstructured play is so beneficial to human development, that again, conflict resolution, empathy, just being a functional human being. It's engaging in unstructured play. It's so good for creativity, again, like interacting with other humans. So yeah, like, go.
Yeah. So one other thing that I thought was really interesting about play ties back into that poll I did on Twitter recently, where I asked people to share what age they were when they first experienced something weird. So I know you said houses was something that you were a little unfamiliar with. It's basically just 12 different areas of life, starting from like your body personally, to your stuff, your immediate environment, and just kind of like zooms out a little bit from there until the circle completes.
Great.
So what I found with all of these responses is that the number one age, I mean, like, what was it, like 90 responses or something? It's not a massive set of data at all, but it's not nothing either. It's not like only 5 people responded. 90 is a good number. So the sample, most common age ended up to be age 4, when people first started experiencing weird stuff. And that is interesting to me, because age 4 is a 5th house, what's called perfection year. So basically it's like a annual perfection years. Like when you're born age 0, it activates that first house of, self and embodiment, and you were born. So body is a big thing. Age 2, age 1, your second house is activated, and that's more about like your stuff. And that's when we start saying mine, this is mine. Yes. Age 2 comes around, you start the 3rd house year, and that house is all about like moving around, short trips. And that's when we start walking. And then it just keeps circling around from there.
Yes.
So age 4 is a 5th house perfection year. And that the 5th house has all to do with creativity and play and pleasure. And performance and stuff like that. So I was wondering, okay, well, that seems to be a huge year for people, and it's a 5th house perfection year regarding play. Does this mean the phenomena really likes play? Or is it like really, does it come through with kids at this age because kids like to play? Is it like both?
Yes.
I don't know. But there's something there to explore.
Oh my God, absolutely. Yes.
Because another age that was common was 16, and 12 years after that,
oh my God. Yes.
is that same house again.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And there absolutely was not an even distribution of ages around like all of these different houses. Like the 12th house, for example, those years, age 11 and 23 and so on, not a single person had something there.
Oh my God.
Now the complete lack of data in a thing like that is also very telling to me. Like that's not just an even chance distribution at all, especially not with 90 different people.
Exactly.
I thought that was interesting.
Yes, that's incredible. Yes, and I love that too. Of like, data isn't about what's there; it's about what's not there. And looking at that, like that's really wild. That can tell us a whole other story too.
Yeah,
like, that's incredible. Yes.
Yeah, it's like with tarot, you want to see what is showing up, but also what is not there. Like, oh, you're getting a lot of cups. Well, where's all of the swords and the fire and whatnot? That's the same sort of thing.
Exactly. I love it when I'm doing a reading for somebody and they're asking about a relationship and everything that comes up is wands. And I'm like, friend, you got to stop focusing on whatever this is. Like, maybe like focus on your career. Yeah. The universe is telling you to look at something else.
Yes, pretty much.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, my brain is like on fire. I'm so excited about this.
And this is also why it's so good to have like tarot readers and, paranormal investigators and people from all different fields, because things blur more than we thought. And that's why I was so interested in Hellier when I first saw it, because they're so open to just like bringing in everyone from a bunch of different fields to see what happens.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. That was the one thing that like drove me nuts about academia was, you have the sociologists and their department and the historians in their department. Everybody's just in their own department. It's like, friends, you all have information that you should be collaborating on to get a whole, again, more data, a holistic picture of what's going on. Like you're only served by getting outside voices and outside perspectives and people with different experiences with the weird, with the paranormal, with the phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. Like that will only help you and give you a broader understanding of things. Yeah.
I would love to talk a little bit about Wednesday night UFO watch.
Yes.
Also called WUFO.
WUFO.
So basically, according to John Keel in the Mothman prophecies, the best time to see a UFO is Wednesday night at 10 p.m. So he had like a bunch of data that he found from like the 50s and 60s and compared it with some other people too. And that just seems to be a thing. So I had tweeted about it one day and I was like, oh, hey, well, I'm going to go out and look at the sky. You want to go out and look at the sky? And then Liminal Earth found it and was like, hey, I know, let's just make this like a big party.
Yes.
So now every Wednesday we just like all go out on at 10 p.m. our local time and just like look up, see if there's any UFOs. But there's also side quests. Like every week I'll give people some stargazing thing to go find. Like this week we looked for Sirius, the fixed star that's right near Orion.
Yes.
So that's fun to do. So like it's very open and 100% free. Anyone can do it. You just like go look at the sky for a little bit on a Wednesday and tell us about it. If you're not into UFOs, you can just go, like look at the moon or do the side quest or whatever. But if you want to like try Estes method sessions to try to contact ultra-terrestrials, you can do that too. We can make UFO water, just like setting out water at night to like let it charge under the UFO vibes. Like it's a very like easygoing, open thing. This is not like a super scientific. No one's out to try to like prove that this is definitively when most people are gonna like see UFOs or anything. It's just kind of like, I don't know, Liminal Earth took it and ran with it, and it's been growing every week. There's a website now for it. We've got punch cards. It's so much fun. And they also have on the website, it's wufo.watch, WUFO.watch. There's also links to different like sky cameras. So if it's cloudy, you can, just go look at what NASA's looking at and things like that. There's a whole bunch of different resources for guided meditations and everything. So that's something that I'm really excited about lately, because it's getting more people to just, like take a break in the middle of the week to just go look at the sky for a little while and hang out with people. And you don't have to like go physically see people, in these pandemic times. Like it could be entirely online, and it's just a fun, nice thing that I'm excited about, and I'm so happy that it's happened.
Of course, yes. Well, that's the thing. It's like, again, I feel like we've talked most of this hour about fun, right? Like playing.
Yeah, we
fun.
sure have.
Yeah. And like, I mean, again, I love talking about play, and like that's what I love about WUFO, that it's play. Like people are having different ideas, and like just that childlike sense of wonder about it, like, oh, I can't be beat, right? Like that is so powerful. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's the main thing going on right now. I'm really excited to see how it grows and evolves, because every week it just seems to be so different with new things every time I blink.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm always seeing new cool things that people are doing, and like hashtagging WUFO, and it's like, oh yeah, UFO water. Oh yeah, like all this other stuff. So yeah, it's good. Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much for listening and or watching. Again, a reminder, if you are listening or watching on a Wednesday night, follow the hashtag WUFO on Twitter. Go to wufo.watch if you want cool things to do on a Wednesday night. Sometimes it's cloudy and you can't look up at the skies in your hometown, but there are different feeds so you can look up at the skies somewhere. Also follow the folks at Liminal Earth, because they're fun and I like them. I am going to put all of Maighdlin's contact information in the description. I also highly recommend getting a chart read by them. Their interpretation for my astrological chart really did change my life and shaped the direction of what I decided to do career-wise and pursuing personal pans. So I'm eternally grateful for them. Anyway, folks, I hope this conversation has inspired you, and I hope that you have a playful and curious day.